Hello, fellow beings of light, and welcome to episode 12 of our podcast. I'm going to be honest up front here. If it's not already obvious, I am sick once again. I can't even count how many times I've had to say that over the course of the last 12 weeks that I've been releasing podcast episodes and activations for all of you. And once again, I am going to take it as a sign of another round of recalibration when it comes to my physical and energy body. Why the recalibration? Well, that would be because a lot has been going on and coming through in regards to my journey and my missions over the last 4 to 5 weeks. You have likely already been seeing that in our name change, in the unnumbered podcast I released 2 weeks ago that gave a little sneak peek at what has been going on, and more slowly in smaller ways throughout the podcast episodes and activations I've been releasing since the 25th of January. And as we wrap up our winter theme in this week's episode and head into our new ones for spring next week, I am both curious and excited to see how everything that has been coming through will continue to be woven into and reflected in what I am channeling and what I'm recording. Since it is, so much, and especially since much of the plan for spring had already been channeled before all of where things are going to be headed started to come in. Like, literally, I had set out all 4 seasons, outlined them before we launched back in December. And there were 3 layers to each half of each season. And winter was filled in for all 3 layers, and spring was filled in for 2, and the rest was just 1, still open-ended. So I'm almost wondering, am I a season ahead of schedule as far as where my team thought I would be in my journey? I mean, it actually wouldn't be the first time I upgraded or expanded sooner than they expected, so I'm actually going to go with yes. And if so, yay me. Actually, I mean, yay me either way, because not only have I upgraded and expanded so much in my knowledge and my abilities and into who and what I am as a soul aspect and a light body and in the collective, but I have also received so much confirmation in the last few weeks of all of it from fellow light workers and fellow channels. It's been an amazing experience the last few weeks, and I'm very grateful for it because for so long things were up in the air and I was just following along, going with the flow like I'm supposed to. And okay, they are still kind of up in the air, but now it's in a way that's more solid, in a way that is steadily building up existing pieces of the puzzle instead of being a jumble of random ones. Huh. Did that make sense? My sick brain does not always function so well. What I meant to say, I think, was where once it was puzzle pieces being thrown onto a pile to be figured out later, now they are pieces being put together into an actual puzzle, that are expanding into the bigger picture that they will become. Yeah, I think that's better. Anyways, this episode. In today's episode, we are wrapping up our theme for the second half of winter, Reconnect. And what will we be reconnecting with? Our final C, our core, our heart center, our inner fire, our intuition. Oh boy. I I'm laughing because I I feel like this episode is going to come through completely different than it would have if it had occurred on schedule last week, instead of being bumped back by our unnumbered episode and announcements. Because I had a clear picture of what this episode was going to be about before then, an outline, but now I'm definitely feeling like I have no idea. It is so crazy the difference a week can make in your journey, especially when you're a channel. So, okay, let's see. Since things are obviously going to go a bit different, let's see who will be the member or members of my team that will be joining me for this episode. Who would like to come forward? You can't see the peaceful smile that just came over my face, but it is there, and you can probably still sense it. It is there because joining us today will be my light body, the light body and gifted Andromedan child, myself and my 5 fellow soul aspects separated from Leora. She is truly something special, far more so than I knew a month ago, but I'm not being called to get into why that is, in what ways, right now. It's not time for that. Instead, what I will say is that it is fitting that she is here with us for this episode, as I am a piece of her. She is my core in some respects. She is the source of my remembered knowledge and abilities and more. And she has lit, not necessarily an inner fire in me, but rather an inner light. Let's go with that. And even if I can't describe how, she has also been guiding my intuition, supporting it, maybe through some kind of indirect confirmation and validation, or just by simply sharing her light and energy with me. I mean, that's all that's necessary. I don't know. It's not really important for the moment. I am gonna have a drink of my tea. Oh, because this episode, while I have this much head and nasal congestion going on, it is definitely going to be interesting. Oh, I can't even breathe deeply because I can't breathe through my nose right now. Okay. Okay, girl. You are talking fast today. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to keep up with that. um, what I'm receiving is connections between those three aspects of our core, our heart center, our inner fire, our intuition, and with our chakras. Uh, our heart center is obviously a reference to our heart chakra. Our intuition is obviously connected to our third eye chakra, although I think it could be argued that one or more of our lower chakras play a role as well, our gut instincts, or even the inner truths we are grounded into. And our inner fire, the obvious connection would be the sacral chakra. But if we think about Kundalini energy, that is a fire that starts from our root and rises up through all of us. So I've pretty much just rattled off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even more of our 7 main chakras, the ones located within our physical bodies. So, how can we define a core then if the things associated with it, those aspects of it, are so spread out throughout us? This is the question that my sick brain has. Shocker. It is because our core is all of those things and none of them at all. And oh boy, that is the frequency I've been on lately for the last 4 or 5 weeks. All thoughts and emotions and everything else is everything and nothing at the same time. So I'm not shocked that is Leora's answer, but I am going to ask her to elaborate because I am a little slow right now and I'm not sure of the connection she's trying to make. Ari ush kada kadis kada kadis kada wush kada kadis kada kadi Ari shudrat karas kada kadis kush kada kadi Arish krush kada kadaris kada bukush kada kadi Arish kush kada kadis kada kada kadaska. What you on earth know as your heart center, that is your core, your connection to all, your connection to us, your connection to source, where everything flows in and out of, to and from your energy field, your frequency, and to and from beyond it. She is drawing my attention to toroidal fields, a term, a physics concept I actually just learned about recently through a session with a fellow channel. I had to look it up, but it is essentially a round donut shaped energy field surrounding us, with us being an hourglass shape, the donut hole, and our heart center being, you guessed it, the center, with the energy from the heart center flowing up from that center point and outward, forming the top half of the donut, and also flowing down from that center point and outward to form the bottom half of the donut. I don't know if I'm actually explaining that well. Probably not. And you clearly can't see the gestures I'm making with my hands, trying to show how it works. You know what? I am making a note to myself to throw in an image of what a toroidal field looks like during editing. Okay, another sip of tea here. So, if I am picking up what Leora is putting down, our energy center, our heart chakra, it plays a vital role, just like our physical heart does for our human body. Our physical heart powers our physical body, keeping it going, while our energy heart powers our energy body. It gives our other chakras the juice they need to facilitate the roles and abilities associated with them. It fuels our intuition. It fuels our inner fire, in addition to our overall frequency at any given time. Long story short, it's important, right? And reconnecting with it and the role it plays is important. Not only that, taking care of it, supporting it, and protecting it is important. Trusting it is important. So, how do we do those things? Where do we start? She's telling me to take a guess. Okay, then. Yeah, I think I know where this one's headed. I think I know where this episode is headed. Oh boy. Feel free to laugh too, along with me, of course. That things are just now clicking when we are probably already, halfway through this episode, time-wise? Okay, let's start our discussion by backtracking to that frequency I mentioned that I am now vibing in earlier, to Leora's response to how we define what our core is. In air quotes, our core is all of those things and none of them at all. Our core, our heart center, our energy center, that is where our everything and nothing at the same time frequency emanates from. Our natural frequency, our highest frequency, or what it should be, where you can be both worried and not worried at the same time, or any other emotion as well, where you can both question and not question at the same time. And the same with any thoughts as well, where you can both hold on and let go at the same time. Now, I know what you're thinking and feeling. That's confusing. How can we be those contrasting, those extreme opposite things at the same exact time? Believe me, I do. I know those thoughts and feelings because I've been knee deep in that frequency for the last month. I've been having them. But that very fact is exactly why I can serve as a witness, why I can testify to not only what it is, but that it is possible. And yeah, it's why I can walk you through it. And clearly that's what I'm being called to do. So let's do that. The reason for our thoughts and feelings of confusion are because we are hung up on our limiting beliefs, on our attachments, another word for it, on our seeing contrasts, on our seeing extreme opposites from a standpoint of duality instead of polarity. What is the difference? When we approach contrasts, opposing extremes, like worried and not worried, from a perspective of duality, we see these as two separate states of being, as opposing states of being, as good or bad, right or wrong. And because of that, we see them as being unable to coexist at the same time. It's one or the other. It can't be both. That's what we're thinking. And because of that perspective, we often get stuck. We often experience suffering. We often experience difficulty in some or all areas of our life because we think being in one state of a thought or emotion means we can't be in the opposite state of a thought or emotion at the same time. And excuse my language here, but bullshit. When we instead approach contrasts, opposing extremes like worried and not worried, from a perspective of polarity, we see those states as being one single central frequency emanating from our heart center outwards, or rather upwards and downwards. Upwards through our upper chakras and downwards through our lower ones. I'm not making that up. That's how polarity works in physics. Again, that toroidal energy field. And our energy field, that toroidal field, is quantum physics, is it not? Polarity is a positive and negative extreme of the same object, the same person, the same whatever, not separate ones. Let's switch things up for a second and use question and not question at the same time as an example to help with this one. From a duality perspective, I can't do both. I can't both question and not question at the same time. It's one or the other. But from a polarity perspective, from a frequency emanating from our heart center perspective, I can use the frequency flowing upwards to my third eye and crown to question, while still using the frequency flowing downwards to remain grounded in my root chakra to what I already know, to my inner truths, to my certainty that allows me to let go and trust, that allows me to question without losing that grounding, that allows me to question and not question at the same time. Now, circle back to worrying and not worrying at the same time being the example. Can you experience the upward flow of your frequency into thoughts of worrying and still remain grounded enough to experience the downward flow of your frequency that knows that it is temporary and will pass, and that you don't need to get stuck in it at the same time? Hell yeah, you can. This is that toroidal field, a connection at the center, emanating a frequency both upwards and downwards at the same time, both flowing outward and meeting again at the center in an outward arc around us and circling back through the system in the opposite way back to the center, constantly flowing, constantly maintaining the same centralized state of being, that everything and nothing at the same time frequency. I hope that makes sense, because I don't think Leora can explain it any better, and I don't think I can either while I'm sick, even if I'm channeling it. Maybe even if I'm not, to be honest. So, reconnecting with our core, with our heart center, with the flow of our energy and natural, or rather neutral maybe, frequency that emanates from it. It means releasing the limitation of a duality perspective and embracing, striving towards a polarity perspective, a rise in our frequency, a maintaining of a continuous cycle, a continuous flow of our energy and frequency level. Now, let's go a step further, because this episode included reconnecting with our intuition and our inner fire, our chakras beyond our heart chakra. And while the perspective shift we have already discussed goes a long way towards supporting our other chakras as well, we only really discussed removing one limitation, one block, a big one at that, but one centered at our heart chakra, pertaining to the flow between it and all of our other chakras. That doesn't mean we don't have other limitations at play or other blocks when it comes to our other chakras, when it comes to our intuition and our inner fire. I don't think I'm not being called to get into specifics when it comes to either, but rather to continue laying seeds, planting questions that are in line with our discussion up to this point. Questions that should allow you to both question and not question at the same time, if you have already begun to remember and reawaken into who and what you are, if you have already begun to embrace and consistently honor your inner truths. this is the point where my brain is probably going to start working slowly again. A little help here, Leora. Be more aware of limiting thoughts and emotions when they arise. Thoughts and emotions that you feel hinder the bounds of what you are or are not, what you can or cannot do. And then question them, but also not question them. Ask if the hindrance, the limitation, is in alignment with your inner truths in your mind, and answer it in the light of those inner truths grounded in your root, and the light of there being nothing that you cannot be and nothing that you cannot do. And see where that leaves you. I am guessing it's going to leave you with a scrunched up WTF face like I have right now, because that all both made perfect sense and didn't make sense at the same time. And no, I was not trying to make a pun there. She wants me to bring up an example from a discussion that I had with a fellow light worker this weekend. Both, I believe, because that light worker thought I should mention it in some way in my podcast or something else, and because she thinks it's relevant for making the point that we are trying to get across here about questioning and releasing limitations, blocks. Which is ultimately releasing that which isn't in alignment with our inner truths, with our purpose, with who we are. And isn't that what we are all hearing and being taught over and over, regardless of who you are following or whose courses you're taking? Right? Okay, the example. The topic of astral projection has come up for me recently because it's timeline jumping is an ability of one of my fellow soul aspects to separate from Leora. In discussing it, the idea has come up that we are all likely doing it without even realizing it. I mean, a lot of us are accessing past and parallel lives, other dimensions, aren't we? We are jumping into those timelines in one way or another to receive memories, knowledge, abilities, to heal, and to do so much more. And what was channeled through me in regards to this was along the lines of, who says there's only one way to astral project? That what we've been told and shown is astral projecting is the only way. Channels, mediums, and psychics all use multiple clairs to receive. They can see, they can hear, they can feel, they can know, and more, or a combination of any of those. So, who says that we can't astral project across time and dimensions through seeing, through hearing, through feeling? through knowing, and more. That fact that we can access past and parallel lives, that we can access other dimensions, that we can know and learn things about them and those in them, tells us that we can. But yet, we don't recognize that. We don't acknowledge it because we've been told otherwise, taught otherwise, or rather, we haven't been told or taught that there are other ways. And that's the assumptions we're operating under, the limitations we've been operating under when it comes to astral projection, when it comes to a lot of things. So expand on this. Question and not question. Compare limitations that you have been given from beyond yourself and what you know to be true about yourself and all of us. Who told us there was only one way to do things, or only one right way to think or feel or act or be? I actually know the answer to that, and it goes far beyond, far further back than what we have learned from our parents, from ancestral lines, from past lives, etc. But I'm not going to get into that right now. That is something that, like a lot of what has been coming through the last month and beyond, will come through in the book that I'm being called to begin writing, and through in our shifting offerings, and through in our podcast and activations a little bit at a time moving forward, like some of what I have shared today has been. Oh, and believe me, the more I receive, the more juicy and interesting, and at the same time, the opposite, aggravating and frustrating it becomes. Everything and nothing, right? But all of that, it's not what's important right now. It's not what all of you are ready to receive right now. That's what I'm being told by my team. What is important, what you are ready for right now, is exactly what Leora was calling me to do. Laying seeds, planting questions. Seeds and questions that will prepare you, begin to calibrate you for what is to come, for what I will have to share with you, for what my team and those beyond it that I've been channeling will have to share with you. And that, I think, is where I'm going to leave this episode. Yeah, I think I'm good with that. Join us Saturday for the accompanying activation for this week's episode. Then again next Tuesday for part 6 of my personal 6 degrees of soul separation journey. And again for a bonus episode later next week, which will cover an overview of our themes for spring and some more updates on our offerings. Yep, you heard right. You're getting 2 podcast episodes next week. I have to stay on track after all, and that bonus unnumbered episode got us off schedule a bit. But that's okay. We are catching up, and all is occurring in the timing, the unfolding that it should be. And before we go, I think there's one more thing, right? We have a portal activation probably too, right? 3-3. So Monday as well, 3-3 portal activation. It's going to be a busy week for me, but we'll get through it. Arishkatakati.